Per usual, the tiny titan. Today I am in purple. Not that you can quite see that, because yesterday I was in blue, now I'm in purple. I do have this really funky little light that kind of gives me all these different LED colors and stuff, but because it's so light outside, I wanted some natural circadian rhythm. So I thought, fuck it, I'll just open the door. So now the light is obsolete, but you know, it still gives us a nice little look. I have got a formidable guest in my hot seat today, and I have been following him for a very, very long time. I'm really excited about this particular episode, as I hope that you are as well, Alix. Guys, please welcome Alix Kikel to the podcast today. Alix, how are you, my man?
Doing amazing. Thank you very much for asking.
Oh, I love that. I love it when people say that they're amazing. What is so amazing about you, Alix, so far?
So, baby boy is now 4 weeks old. Will be this Friday, 4 weeks old. Got to play with my daughter this morning. Had a great workout this morning. Wife's feeling better from the C-section. I have no reason to ever complain, and my life's good.
That's awesome. And it's the things that you want to be grateful for, right?
Exactly. Yeah, like you could have whatever kind of negativity go on in your life. Like yesterday, actually, no, it was Monday of this week. One of those days where everything went wrong. I pick up my shaker, it fell and shattered on the ground. You cook a meal and your daughter comes and kicks you in the shin and you drop it everywhere. Like every little thing you could think that could have gone wrong went wrong. And those are the days where you just say, okay, day's gonna suck. I'm gonna make the best of it that I can. And you find the positives in all those negatives, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. They always say that every cloud has a silver lining, and it's just like, you know what, you've got to find it. So yeah, shit goes wrong. So you dropped your shaker on the floor, you can put some more protein in a different shaker. Yeah, you dropped your meal. Okay, that sucks, but you know, at least your baby wasn't hurt. So bonus, you know, there's always
exactly.
Always things that you can be grateful for. So for Alix, for people who do not know who you are and who have been living under the proverbial rock, should we say, would you just give us a little bit of a background about who you are?
I am someone that gets paid to live his passion, which is the fitness, athletic, whatever lifestyle industry. And my family comes first, and that's pretty much it. I have some letters behind my name. I've worked with a fair amount of people, but that's kind of me summarized.
All right, that's really nice. Nice and easy. Okay, but you are a bodybuilder, and you coach bodybuilders online?
Correct, yes. I am probably the world's worst competitive bodybuilder. Only competed a couple of times. Last 2 preps have failed because of usually health gives out for me. My body usually, I get stage lean and then I'm still 4 weeks out and I say, oh, I'm not lean yet. Like I was looking at pictures the other day with my wife from my last prep, and I've had gallbladder issues since I was a kid and always had acid reflux my whole life. I knew it was gallbladder related, but I'm like, I'll take care of it later, because you can't go in and electively say, take out my gallbladder. They won't do that. So I pushed it way too hard, and gallbladder gave out, and then actually shut down. COVID, all that bull crap happened. So it was one of those things where it's like, okay, I'm focusing on family and work, because right now both are going extremely well for me. So competition is the last thing on my mind right now. But in the background, training every day, I do my boxing, I have cycling, I do a lot of stuff on the back end as well, just because it's my passion.
For sure, for sure. I have been following some of your stuff that you're doing with boxing at the moment. I'm really interested in some of the things that you are doing, because you're using some ergogenic aids at the same time as well, aren't you? And this is one of your educational kind of realms that you dive into. I remember actually sending you a message personally asking a question about the use of T3. And you came back with this huge voice note just explaining all of like the cascades of what can happen, and then just basically say, yeah, do you know what? It's actually okay. but it was phenomenal. I love all of that educational aspect of things, because I'm a big boffin, I'm a big geek, and I love it all. So this is some of the things that I wanted to get into, because you have transitions, should we say, from competitive bodybuilding with the use of assistance and going into more health-related fitness markers with power and velocity and speed. Now, everybody knows that I am a sports performance nutritionist in Strongman and powerlifting and, of course, bodybuilding. But what I have found recently is that a lot of the guys who are coming from a background of strength sports are wanting to transition over to bodybuilding and vice versa. And I really wanted to get into your mind about the transition of things that we look at in terms of performance enhancers, with nutritional aspects, possibly, maybe some kind of ideas with over-the-counter type stuff with potassiums and sodiums, and then realistically the mistakes that people can make by trying to treat bodybuilding the same way as they would treat strongman. So shall we start with a foundation of bodybuilding? And do you want to start with men or women?
Where do you want to take this? Because we could have very broad spectrum or very specific. There's a lot we could talk about here.
I know, and that's why I'm excited. We might have to do a two-parter.
Yeah.
Let's start then with female bodybuilders, the baseline of what we would start with, and then transitioning over to strong women.
Okay, cool. So we are looking at, and let me clarify really quickly, obviously, because it matters. Are we talking about, we'll say, gen population going into female bodybuilding, or more of the strong women going into female bodybuilding? Where's the preliminary baseline at?
So let's have a preliminary baseline. We'll have like a case study, I suppose, then. So let's have somebody who is a trained figure athlete. So she's a seasoned competitor. She has already got a baseline of performance enhancing drugs on her system, and she wants to transition over to competitive strong woman.
Cool. Awesome. So we'll start there.
Yeah.
So you are looking at almost going from very specific to very broad. So strongman is probably, you got to be the best of everything. You have to be a very multidimensional athlete. You don't just have one energy system. You can't just go in and say, we're just going to throw myotrauma and damage at our bodies and hopefully grow from it. Because the reality is, a lot of the bodybuilders, male or female, training isn't the biggest thing. It's definitely important, but most of them have the genetic capacity to just go in and do whatever they want and still progress from that. Now, obviously, that's not everyone, so we're not really talking about them, but it has to be out there. For most people, when you're looking at that female bodybuilding or even male bodybuilding scenario, anything physique-wise, it's really looking at a combination of just trying to drive the alactic and the glycolytic energy systems. Yes. So all that basically means is lower repetitions, higher repetitions, and fluxing different shit, different substrate to basically fuel the processes. Yes. That's all it is. So it's just creating trauma, creating tension, doing more over time. Everyone says progressive overload. In reality, that's very, very true, but people misunderstand what that means. It means doing more over time. So progressing over time, not always adding load to the bar, not always adding reps, not always adding whatever. It's just over time, you should be kind of better. So with all of my hypertrophy-based athletes, I base that off of our myocyte maturation cycle. So just how a muscle cell actually grows. So it starts, and it's funny because once you hear this, this is the way drugs work. This is the way food kinds of works. It starts low and then it builds up over time. So essentially it starts off, we have all these different undifferentiated cells, all these undifferentiated satellite cells in the sarcolemma. They're just sitting there waiting to basically be given a job. So we start training, they start getting acted upon, those undifferentiated satellite cells start turning into actual nuclei, or start turning into rather myocytes. Those myocytes turn into nuclei turns into nucleus. All of a sudden, you have a new freaking muscle fiber. Yes. That's basically how it works. And as they're maturing through that entire process through, let's just say, 12 to 20 weeks, something like that, what's happening is the demand we're putting on those actual myocytes, they'll get given specific jobs. So whether it's to hold glycogen, whether it is to more deal with the pH changes, deal with whatever, they're all given very specific jobs. So if we understand that in my kind of idea and realm, it would go something like, okay, we have the initial baseline week, just get used with your baseline volume. And then weeks 2 through 6, I call it a glycolic upregulation phase, where all it is you're adding sets. Yeah. So we're building up our capacity to be able to later on handle damage. Because most people go into the gym and they start just overloading like crazy. And what usually goes first at about 6 to 8 weeks? The joints. Joints go first because you can't hold up to it. So we have to, just the way that myocytes grow and just the way that actual androgen long esters work, we have to build up all the preliminary baseline shit to be able to handle everything on top of that. So mitochondria, ribosomal-based interactions, all those little things that no one really cares about, that's week 2 through 6 in my paradigm. Now, okay, we have the baseline subsystems there. Now we can actually grow. Now is whenever we start actually adding loading to the bar. You're always kind of trying to progress, but now you really get aggressive with that loading with the higher total work per sets. You do that for week 7 through 12. And then we have the final couple weeks of that myocyte maturation cycle where now it's basically kind of go crazy, see what you can do, really push yourself, add some intensifiers, have fun. And then right before the wheels fall off the wagon, that's when you change it. Yes. So you hear that and you say, okay, that kind of makes sense from a bodybuilder, physique, hypertrophy-based side of things. what about the actual strongman side of things? That's a completely different world. Technically, everyone's always driving anabolism. Everyone's always gaining and trying to push hypertrophy. It's just through different modalities. Yeah. So a lot of strongman, powerlifting, things like that, a lot of that is more neurological than anything. So you have the baseline. Yeah, seriously, yeah. It is in the off season, you're really trying to actually accumulate all of the strength. And then during the prep, you're actually trying to just show it off, which is all just a game of neurology and showing off the motor patterns that you already previously learned. So
this
technically,
sorry to interrupt you. This is one of the biggest things that I tell all of my clients all the time when they keep on saying, oh, well, I want to grow and I want to do this and I want to do that. And it's like, you are training like a strongman. If you train like a strongman, you are not going to look like a bodybuilder. It is completely fucking different. And people keep on saying to me, a stronger muscle is a bigger muscle and a bigger muscle will look better on stage. It's like, yeah, I'm not going to argue with that. But have you seen some of the 47 kilo powerlifters? They're really small and they're really straight up and down, but they can lift like 200 kilos. So, crack on. It is neurological. You've got to derive all kind of those energy systems. Sorry, that was one of my biggest pet peeves that I've always heard. So I'm glad that you are reiterating that.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And it's funny you bring up the size thing because the correlation is kind of there, but it's also kind of not. Like you said, look at the 40 kilo people, the 60 kilo people, and they're some of the strongest people out there because of leverages, because of their actual orthopedic structure, and because of how good they are mentally at driving those actual motor patterns. So the strongman powerlifting game more gets into a quasi performance from a myological, so muscle tissue aspect, as well as the neurological, whereas the bodybuilding is almost more myological. You still have those neurological interactions. You can't get around that with motor learning, but it's still a little bit more heavily emphasized on the motor learning side of things with the strongman and the powerlifters. So the transition from training is massive. In terms of the caloric demands and what we do with nutrition, it could start being pretty severe. If you look at a lot of physique-based competitors, how many people care about their aerobic capacity? People aren't doing cardio. People aren't doing things like that. You go to strongman, and a good strongman or a good powerlifter is making sure that they can recycle ATP very proficiently. If not, you're not going to recover from your top sets. Correct. So it should be, technically everyone should be doing that work, but mostly physique bodybuilders don't, and then mostly strongman powerlifters actually do. So you have that transition on the training, on the nutritional side of things, potentially needing more carbohydrates, more something, more substrate on the strongman powerlifting side of things because you're doing all the extra work you need to. One of the things I really like in powerlifting and strongman is most of them do a lot of their rehab work and bodybuilders don't, which is cool because people are taking time to focus on mobility and orthopedics and making sure that things are going to last long term because that heavy loading is obviously, it's going to take a toll somewhere. So then we get into the drug conversation and how in depth did you want me to go here? Because it's hard with the pharmaceutical side of things because it's not so much sport dependent, it's need dependent. So just because you're a bodybuilder or a strongman doesn't mean you take X or Y drug. It's more, what's your gap? What are you lacking? We take it for that.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so let's have a look at the mistakes then that people make in terms of choosing certain types of performance-enhancing drugs. Because people will look at the anabolic to androgenic ratio, and people can obviously say, let's have a look at the androgens for a strongman and a powerlifter, and not an anabolic high ratio in comparison to a bodybuilder. So let's have a look at maybe the ratios and the types of drugs that you could potentially use.
Okay, so as much as I like being the science guy or whatever, all that stuff, the anabolic androgenic ratios, I honestly don't even know them because I don't even care about them. If we look at all baseline androgens, so we'll say all testosterones, all DHTs, all 19-ORs, except for the exotic things like tren, trestolone, DHB, those three, and superjaw, a couple other things. Besides those exotic compounds, every androgen expresses roughly the same amount of protein. So the translational machinery shit that happens to drive protein synthesis, they're all basically the same. So what makes them different? Because they have different names, different structures, so they have to do something different, right? Yeah. If they all drive the same amount of translation, it's the secondary, tertiary, and quaternary side effects in cascades that actually drive it to do other things. So whether it holds more glycogen, messes with creatine phosphate more, whether it drives neurology more, whether it does X, Y, Z more or less, that's what's going to make it better or worse for you. So we have the traditional 19-OR column where, again, a lot more retention, a lot more glycogen retention. So it's that androgen receptor B isoform. At that isoform interaction, metabolic shit changes, and you start retaining more things. So all from the colloid and soft tissue side of things, usually 19-ORs could be your friend. So if you're the skinny type person, you might want to go on the 19 North side of things purely to protect yourself from all the heavy loading. If you were the person who is, let's just say, bigger, we're looking at the DHT category of things, where maybe you just need to learn the motor pattern better, or maybe everything's perfect and you just need more tissue, more translation. That's more the DHT side of things. And they all have their differences, but we'll just leave it there. If you are, let's say, lacking in the aerobic, in the energy system side of things, maybe it's phlebotic wise, and you just don't have enough red blood cells there, that's more of the testosterone category.
For sure. Yeah.
So we are looking, and again, each and every single drug in each category does different things, but that's how we're basically looking at it. And then you have the peptide category, where you bring in your growth hormones, where literally, and I'm a very big fan of growth hormone from a, we'll say, an appreciation side of things. It's one of my just pet subjects that I love to learn about, because you look at every single neurological, myological, look at these soft tissue cascades. You just go down the list, how it's used with people to actually help with ejection fraction rate for cardiac health. Go down the list of things potentially be involved in. It's awesome. So it has its place. The insulin category side of things, you take it pre-workout, it potentiates your workout, makes the workout better, drives more anti-catabolic cascades. Take it post-workout, you get a shitload more storage and recovery. You take it, before your growth hormone, you can potentially potentiate it and get more action out of that. So the peptide side of things are basically very dependent. They're very environmentally dependent, specifically on when they're used and when they're timed. Whereas the androgens are kind of the dumb players that just do what they're told. They're going to do it. You take it based on the half-life. Most of the times, people have some weird metabolism with that. But in general, the androgens are kind of the dumb players that produce the most effects over time, but also have the biggest strain on your health. And the peptides are more specific, less total efficacy, but also easier, less burdenous. Is that a word? I'll say it's a word. Burdenous on your health, obviously doses equate and all that fun stuff. But it really is just a game of making a column of, I'm good at this, I'm bad at this, look at what you're bad at, and then take the drugs to fix that.
See, that's so interesting, isn't it? Because obviously you can use specific compounds as well for certain amounts of time, and then you can use other ones for a shorter period. So if you're going to be looking at halo testing, for example, for a strongman, there is no way that you could put a bodybuilder on halo testing, even for like maybe 3 days or something, even for, oh, go on, you're going to interrupt. Yeah, go on, tell me.
It's perfect though. So this tells you, okay, drugs do different things in different environments.
Yeah.
So for the bodybuilder who is extremely low body fat, extremely low water retention, in that final window, the final 7-10 days of utilizing it, it can drive the textural changes so well. So you could have the skin sit on the muscle belly differently, give a drier, harder appearance, show off those striations, so the separation a little bit better. So halo could be used to drive the texture and how the actual physique looks on stage and the hardness. Whereas with a powerlifter strongman, using more for the neurological side of things. And I actually have a video coming out on this that you'll appreciate. It talks about that neurological upregulation from a voltage aspect from halo testing. Your brain gets upwired to such a high degree, some people need to subsidize that because they don't have enough choline to keep up with that. So from a subsidy aspect, you may need to bring in some alpha GPC on actual competition day to actually fuel all of those neuronal firing that's essentially going on in there. So halo used the strongman powerlifter, more neurological. Halo testing used for a bodybuilder, more, I don't even want to say skin, but it's more the appearance aesthetics type thing.
God, that's really interesting. Okay, yeah, when you get that video out, basically, yeah, tag me in that. I want to know about that shit, because that's really cool. You see, again, these are all misconceptions and fallacies, and, so many people just don't understand the ins and outs of certain particular drugs. So let's go into some of, like, the most common mistakes that you personally come across and you personally see in terms of people transitioning, because I'm assuming that you possibly have made some mistakes yourself transitioning from bodybuilding to your power output at the moment.
So I think one of the biggest things, and this actually goes not so much just from powerlifting to over the strongman or bodybuilding over to the powerlifting strongman world, but I think it's in general where everyone in powerlifting has a certain, like a large majority of people where they say this is how it's always been done, so this is what we do. Same thing with strongman, powerlifting, bodybuilding. Everyone kind of does that in certain sports. In the bodybuilding world, you can see that at the top and you start saying, oh, well, everyone's dying in their 40s, so something should probably be changed. You look at a lot of the powerlifting and strongman, you say, okay, people are getting stronger, but they're not accelerating at the rate that they should, or at least I don't think it's there. I think people should be making a lot more progress than is actually there. So we start having to disassociate from everything that we've thought we've known. And it's hard because, again, who am I to even be talking? Someone could watch this interview and then go see another podcast and someone's saying the complete opposite thing. So it's one of those things where we have so much information out there today, sometimes it's almost like an overload, where so many opinions, so many things, we have to kind of, I think, look and see what makes common sense. And to me, you don't have to be a brainiac to figure out what happens in clinical pharmacology. How do they prescribe you medicines if you go to the doctors? If you have a specific problem, they fix with a specific drug. It's the same thing with athletics. So transitioning a little more to what you were asking, a little more on topic here. If we look at that transition, I usually see the problem being mostly energy system based. So a lot of the bodybuilders for males will be taking a lot more testosterone and almost maybe getting benefit of it because everyone has some good responses to that drug. Every drug depends on the person's individual metabolism. But over on the powerlifting strongman side of things, that's kind of the home for testosterone because that's the energetic athletic column of drugs. And again, Broderick Chavez, one of my best friends in the world, he has termed the athletic column and things like that. So I use those all the time. They're just so perfect because they describe them perfectly.
Yeah.
But either way, so we see that transition. And it's not that testosterone is bad in the physique world. It's just, what do you need? So it's not so much people are making mistakes. It's more just going back to taking the right thing for the right reason. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen quite a lot of people use the wrong kind of drugs, especially women. So I've seen women go on, well, I'm not going to actually give dosages and that kind of thing, but women going on Trestolone, for example, and that is in my opinion, like a holy shit.
Women don't need more estrogen. And that's
no, they really
don't. Estrogen so high, yeah.
So it's that kind of thing. I mean, obviously there's been a few incidences over the past few years where people have been dying young and that kind of thing. We're not going to go into the ins and outs like we were talking about off air.
Yeah.
But on some of the occasions that you have seen, have you seen more virilization recently in women, or have you seen less of that virilization? Just as an interest, because I've got my own opinion on this.
So it's somewhat hard because most female competitors don't care.
Yeah.
The virilization is the last thing on their mind because they don't want to have kids in the future.
Sure.
So that's almost a non-issue. What I will say, what I see, especially over in your neck of the woods where you live, tren is a really heavy drug pushed on females, which I've used tren on some women in the past because they would not prep without it. But it's never the player you want to use. It's never something I would love to introduce to a female because there's 10,000 other better things that they could use and not have all the negative consequences. So I see over where you live a lot of the trend pushed on the females. And then what was it? It was tren and Mastron, which is funny because you would think Mastron manages estrogen, does some cool things on the DHT neurological side of things. With females, they either respond really well to it or terribly. And mostly maybe 8 out of 10 respond terribly to it. So
how do they respond terribly to it from what you've seen?
So from the Mastron side of things, it is too much voltage from a neurological aspect, usually for them to actually handle. So we have I don't want to say screwing up decision making, but in the gym, whenever you get ready for a big lift. And whenever you miss it, that's purely a decision-making process. You go up, you're getting all jittery and all hyped up, and then all of a sudden, your walkout on your squat is different than it's ever been before. The descent is so shaky. The pause is longer than it's ever been. Like, that's all a decision-making process. So from a pure neurological side of things, I see that getting almost too stimulated in females. And then I see way too much hair loss coming from Mastron with females, which, again, person-dependent, but, 8 times out of 10, it almost always happens. And we just see side effects pile up with Mastron with females for most of them and less positives. Whereas you bring in a Primabol or even an Anabol or Turinabol if they need that drug, and you almost see all positives and no negatives. So it's just usually the Mastron, the Trenbolone equation is just drugs that seemingly don't respond well to female physiology, which could be for dozens of different reasons. And some women do respond well to them, but the vast majority don't.
That's an interesting one. I've heard quite a lot of people using Mastron, especially in like maybe the last kind of 3 to 4 weeks of a contest prep, just to kind of help suppress that estrogenic fat patterning and help bring their legs in, because a lot of people know, especially in bodybuilding, that females carry their legs. Of course they carry their legs. They carry their body fat in their lower extremities, and they do find them very, very difficult to get in, should you say, especially if you're looking at some of the older masters classes as well, like master's
Mhm.
physique, massive figure.
Yep.
What have you come across, and how have you actually come over or overcome those particular elements for like body fat patterning?
So two things. First of all, because in my paradigm, it's very simple. If there's fluid retention, we take care of it during peak week. Diuretics are so safe, rather, they're so effective. There's a reason why Lasix had like 30 million prescriptions last year alone, or 2018, whatever the numbers were, I forget. But they're very safe and very effective. So if you know what you're doing and you're not just being an idiot and abusing things, then the diuretic equation isn't bad. So let's say we have all the fluid taken off and it actually is an estrogen-driven problem. That's where we have the Arimidex and or the Nolvadex equation. So we have Nolvadex to actually change the distribution of fat, so it can aid in that stubborn fat loss patterning. We can have that to shift fluid dynamics. We can put fluid in more favorable places. Usually, I see a lot of women actually transitioning to breast tissue, which is funny because Nolvadex stops binding at the nipple and can never say the word alveolar. Is that how you pronounce
Yeah,
it?
yeah,
At,
ideally, yeah.
yeah, I can never pronounce it. But either way, we see that shifting in fluid and estrogen overall fat distribution with the Nolvadex, and then we bring in something that's very quick acting like the Arimidex to manage the enzyme, not the ribosome. Aromasin would be the ribosome. That's a long-term manufacturing problem. We would bring in Arimidex, be very short acting. And again, that would manage the aromatase enzyme. So then you could just manage estrogen so it's at a normal range and not, too high or too low. So
Mm.
all these AIs aren't bad. They're bad whenever you're taking your estrogen. Just because you're taking Arimidex doesn't make it inherently bad. A lot of people have that negative connotation. But even at that, you don't need to put in an aromatase inhibitor at 6 weeks out. You're looking at the final weeks, 4 weeks at managing all the estrogen and fluid dynamics and all those fat changes. Because in reality, at 4 weeks out, you should be pretty much stage ready. It's the final 2 weeks. 2 weeks out, you coast in, 1 week out, and then you just do your peak week.
Yeah, absolutely. And having a look at that perspective, crossing over to the strength sports, would you change anything in maybe like the last 3 weeks in terms of any special supplementation for the last 3 weeks for a female peak?
Massively different. So obviously on the physique side of things, we're looking at the physique. On the
Sure.
strongman powerlifting side of things, we're looking at performance. So it doesn't
Yeah.
matter how they look. So the peak is completely different with what you do with glucose, ions, fluid. All that is completely different because you're not trying to dry out a physique or anything. So that's completely different. Now we're also looking at the neurological side of things because no matter who you are, the act of performing on stage and all these competitions, it's all neurologically motor driven. So if we look at what you're doing before, so you basically had this neurological two phases. We're looking at a recruitment phase and then a refinement phase. That recruitment phase is essentially, we'll say, maybe 8 weeks out to like 4 weeks out.
Yeah.
And then from there, from 4 weeks out to actual competition day, it's more that refinement phase. So the recruitment phase, you're really looking at trying to learn the new motor pattern. Refinement is you've learned that, now you have to subsidize it. So one of the simple little over-the-counter things, and I'm not sure how easily accessible it is for you over there, nootropic-wise, would be more the alpha GPC in the recruitment, or rather Neuropept in the recruitment, and then alpha GPC in the refinement. So the Neuropept helps with motor learning. The alpha GPC would actually help with subsidizing all the new costs from that new skill. At the same time, you look at the pharmaceutical side of drugs, something like an insulin before, so being very hyperinsulinemic during the workout itself. So a pre-workout dose of insulin can drive a lot of motor learning during that session. We have, like we talked about, the halo testings and things like that. That's not really something that females should be using. So we stay away from the halo, maybe bring in a different kind of DHT or the insulin or even just the over-the-counter aids. It's more the motor learning neurological process versus the physique person who cares about looking a certain way.
Yeah, that's really cool. I really like that kind of thing. And so this is what we're talking about, guys. You cannot just kind of put in the same supplementation or even use the same kind of amounts of foods or fluids or over the counter type things for different variances in sport, especially when you are looking at something that's completely different in terms of aesthetics versus performance. So let's have a look at your particular performance then, because you are more based on terms of, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but you are more power, speed, and velocity wise, as opposed to realistic brute core strength and caring how you look. So you are a complete, and not that I'm saying that you don't care how you look. Of course you care how you look. But you know what I mean. You're not going to go and showcase your physique as a boxer or a cycler, for example. So what have you done as a transition? And one thing I'm really interested in is your mindset, because you put quite a lot into your mindset for prep as in a bodybuilder, and then having that taken away by having that realization of being said, yeah, actually you're not going to make it as a bodybuilder because of your genetics, your structure, this, that, and the other. How did you deal with that and accept the fact that you would transition to performance?
So it's funny. I don't know if I said the wrong things, but I still am a bodybuilder.
Sure.
But I also box and I also do cycling. So I'm definitely going to get back on the competitive stage in the future.
Oh,
Bodybuilding's
okay. Sorry.
Yeah, bodybuilding's still my primary goal. I know I'm never going to turn pro, but that's still like my home is just in bodybuilding. I love it so much. But I grew up doing amateur boxing, and then you realize I have a family. I should probably take care of my cardiac health. So then the cycling comes in. So I'm at this weird bodybuilder that's a multi-dimensional athlete because of I want to live long, and then I also just like boxing. So my biggest struggle is trying to do, how do I do boxing and eat enough food and still make sure that I'm still growing and building and having the physique that I want. And that was very interesting because I had to look, and the way I have it split up now is a 2 times per week session of actual boxing, 5 weight training sessions, and then 3 cycling sessions. So if you look at the cycling sessions are all more pro-elastic work. So that elastic portion of your atrium, making sure that we don't have, or rather we have the capacity to handle any left ventricular hypertrophy that's going on. So the pressure coming in from the heart is able to be absorbed by the elasticity of the atrial wall. Yeah. So got that covered over there. On the boxing side of things, because the weight training is very self-explanatory. It's a modified bro split Monday through Friday. Everyone knows about that stuff. But the boxing side of things, it's split up into more of I call it a damage power, like carnage-based day, where it's essentially all out as hard as you can go for as long as you can go, rest as long as you need, and then repeat that X amount of times. Okay. So I worked up last mesocycle. I think it was about 16 total rounds of that. And I would like to get to 20 this time. So I reset down at 8. I'm back to 10. I'll slowly add 1 each time. That's the first session of the week. Can't do that twice a week or else I know my bones would just crumble. So obviously the other session needs to be more bodybuilding friendly, but still have some kind of, I'll say some kind of a boxing advantage. So I call that more of my heme speed pace day. We're really focusing on fluxing blood volume, really focusing on hypoxia, so just lacking oxygen, and more speed-based work. So it is as fast as you can go, not actual power-based, but speed velocity-based, as fast as you can go for 15 seconds on, minute off, and then repeat that. Again, same kind of things, up to 10 rounds. I want to get that to 20. And so you have that amount of blood volume flux and capacity. So from a bodybuilding aspect, my traps, my biceps, my triceps, my shoulders, you're done. And the pump is ridiculous. The sheer lack of oxygen drives so much stress and so many pH-based changes because I do all nasal breathing that alone is driving growth on top of giving me my ability to stay healthy, on top of my ability to have fun with boxing. So I'm at this weird, I don't even know what I am anymore. I'm definitely a bodybuilder because I still have the mass monster goal, but it's kind of like dumbed down because I'm not going to play the drug card because I know that's not me. And that's just, I'm not willing to do certain things that would take for me to even become an okay bodybuilder, let alone like becoming a pro. That dream died with me years ago. I'm not risking my life for that. It's not worth it, and I still wouldn't make it. So there comes reality at the end of the day. But for me, because you asked about the mentality side of things, it was easy for me, but I also have a family. They've been my number one priority forever. So for me, it's kind of like, well, that's out, but that's fine because I have my family. You know what I mean? So for me, it was easy, but I know for a lot of people, it's not.
Yeah, it is. And I'm with you on this one because I was a competitive powerlifter just due to medical issues and that kind of thing. I was told that I could never deadlift again and I should probably never squat again. And it just kind of destroyed me a little bit more so. But do you know what? I'm a Commonwealth bench holder. So it's like, well,
that's awesome.
The bench. So, I've got nothing to worry about. If I can't do lifty off the floor in a competitive manner, then, I can just do some lifty somewhere else and I can still be happy.
The positive side of things, like we were talking about before.
Exactly, the positive side of the things. And I'm exactly like you. So I'm a hybrid. I do powerlifting and I do bodybuilding. Now, it's not the same because I don't do the power and velocity stuff, but I am very savvy in the fact that I do cardio and I do different variances of cardio. Good. And I do all my prehab and my rehab, where all of the YTIs that you've got to do and like the external we've got to all do them, guys, because they are very, very, very important. And mentality in this game is so massive. I was talking with one of my best friends about this, and he actually said, you know what, if somebody said to me, you can either go out when I'm in a competitive stage, and you can enjoy my birthday with me because it's only one day, or you can go and bodybuild, I would choose bodybuilding all the time. And I really do feel like, you know, my social life is impacting my bodybuilding. Do you feel like that, Vic? And I went, no.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, no. It's bodybuilding is awesome, but there is so much more to life than bodybuilding, like living.
Yeah. Okay. So funny, because literally before we came on, I was trying to post up a video of one of my clients who's competing at the Amateur Olympia in 6 weeks. And I was trying to post a video. It deleted the video 5 times. So I just screenshot it and did pictures of him. But super nice guy. Again, someone that I would rank very highly in terms of just morals. He's just a really good person, really good friend to me. And that post was all, okay, 6 weeks out, 255 pounds. He's coming together nicely. But the key and the point of that post was what I talked about was how he's handling things with his wife, meaning every other prep before, he didn't handle things very well. This time around, he's having an active effort to make sure that he listens, he still talks, and that relationship is kept so important. So many people just throw their relationships away for a competition, and it doesn't matter who's going to be for you there afterward. You know, I understand you have to make some sacrifices for competition, high-level competition, but you got to give back at some point, and this is all voluntary. So you are telling, or you were rather you are allowing yourself to be put through all of this, which is fine. You shouldn't take it out on other people. So that was the point of that post, and it goes back to what you were saying.
Definitely, definitely. And it's like you said, those people who are with you, supporting you throughout the entire thing. This was another conversation that I had with my bestie, because he's having some bad family relationships at the matter, and he's basically cut these people out of his life because they're toxic towards him. And it's like I said to him, man, you know what? Just because people are your blood does not make them your family, because it's the people who surround you that support you throughout your entire endeavors, like me, and we're not blood related, but you know, he's my bro. And he will always will be at the end of the day. So it's those kind of relationships that you've got to cherish and not push people away about it. So this is another interesting one then, and it's probably a personal question. You can tell me to fuck off if this is the case. This is too much of a personal one, but I don't mind if that's the case. When you first started dabbling into the biggest side of the performance enhancing drugs, I suppose, how did your wife respond in a supportive manner or a non-supportive manner? Because I have this kind of thing with a couple of my clients at the moment where they're saying they want to start it, but they don't want their wife to know. And it's like, nah, hang on.
I was going to say, yes, that's the worst thing you could do. Yeah. Whether you're guy or girl, tell your partner. You can't keep secrets or lies, because it all starts there, and then it just goes downhill from there. So I had started getting into it because I was coaching people to use it, and I wasn't using it at that point. I started off posting on like the bodyboarding.com forums and just doing little things myself, and people started just reaching out for coaching. So as that piled up in the natural world, and I got a lot of experience and we'll say good placings over there with people, all of a sudden now the enhanced people said, oh, can you do this for me? And I said, I don't know what I'm doing, but I can learn. And so after the theory was, even though theory was working, I still had to experience it myself. Because if I didn't, I couldn't be that person to say, just do this. I have to experience it too. So at that point, it was kind of, I wanted to take my physique to the next level. And it was also kind of a business decision, because you kind of need to do this if you are going to be telling other people to do it. So I sat my wife down, we talked about it, and she wasn't cool with the idea. She didn't love it, but at the same time, she trusted me in my opinion. And we're very lucky in the sense that I never did things too stupid. Definitely pushed the envelope more than I should have, but never really crossed that line, did anything stupid. So luckily, because obviously the gallbladder, things like that, like I just always pushed it too hard, just training and cardio wise. But yeah, no, we had a very easy transition with all of that. And then now I only take what's prescribed to me through my doctor. And then whenever competition would come around, then that's a different conversation. But I'm not in prep, and until I'm in prep, there's no reason for me to drive up more androgens or growth hormone or anything like that. So for now, it's okay. But then there's a different conversation when prep comes around.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you have these same kind of conversations with your clients as well? Do they ever come to you and say, right, I want to cross over, but I want to keep it a secret?
Yeah. I have a very open relationship with all of my clients. Everyone knows they have my email 24/7. I help people with relationship problems, with anything. I need to know what's going on in your life, and I won't work with someone unless I think we're going to be friends. Because to me, I put in way too much time and love that I'm a light switch. I'm either on or off. I either love someone or I kind of hate them. And I hate to say it like that, but I'm either going to love working with you or I'm not going to like it at all. And if I don't like it at all, I'm not going to put in the effort. Sure. So everyone that I work with, we have a really good relationship, and questions like that come up all the time. A lot of sexual dysfunction based problems, that how many women can go and talk to people about, to another guy about their sexual problems or marriage problems and feel okay with it. So we talk about absolutely everything. And going back to the original question of talking about hiding it, it's always nope, that's the wrong avenue to go down. Talk it out. If you can even talk about it, then there's going to be problems in the future, and family comes first. So why jeopardize that just to keep a secret? She might be fine with it. You don't know.
Yeah, this is it, isn't it? Emotion. People just like negate emotions so much. Do you know, over here, there's such a huge pile. I mean, there's a plethora of coaches who literally just kind of go, right, here's your plan, off you go. And, expect magic to happen. But then when they come to their check-ins, and then all of a sudden it's like, do you know what? I had a bad week because I didn't sleep because I had an argument with my partner, and I did this and I did that. And then the coach is like, whoa, I'm not your marriage counselor. It's like, do you know what? That is really ridiculous, because emotion and talking, and you are literally putting your life and your health in your coach's hand. It's like, I only have a certain amount of clients. I will cap my clients on a monthly basis, and I will not have any more of that, or more than that. So, because I don't want my level of service to drop. And like you said, I want to be friends with every single one of my clients, which I am. So I expect the exact same thing from yourself, that you know exactly who your client is, what their wife is called, whether they've got kids, what their dog
favorite color, birthdays, what they painted their house, the moving, how COVID impacted them. Their puppy just lost a toe, which was a weird story from yesterday. Yeah, but it's funny because I'll disagree with you, but very respectfully. There's so many good coaches out there. There's so many bad coaches out there. I will never judge anyone else. I do my thing. I'm happy. I keep it that way. I don't talk bad on other people.
Sure.
But certain clients like to have the drill master where they don't hear their emotions and they just want to be given a plan and told exactly what to do. Totally. There's coaches like that and there's clients like that. So that's completely cool, but it's clearly not you and it's clearly not me. So as long as that's out there in the open, people do whatever makes you happy.
Yeah, this is it. Absolutely. You've got to find the coach that fits your particular thing. I have one client and I literally speak to her once a week, but that's the way she likes being coached. And it's just like, okay, you're absolutely awesome. You've ticked the boxes, you've done the plan, you've smashed it off, you've won your competition. Great. What's the next plan? Whatever you tell me to do. Okay, let's just roll with that. It's almost like coaches have got to be a chameleon, and they've got to be that open chameleon like you were talking about. God, we've gone off on a tangent on that side of things, didn't we?
Oh, yeah, and I'm so bad with it because I'll just keep talking too, so.
It's fine. I mean, obviously, I won't keep you for too much longer. But let's just kind of get into like the last little bit of things, and then I have my specific question that I throw a curveball to everybody. And I know that you haven't listened to any of these podcasts, so I'm really excited about your answer to this particular one.
And that's no offense to you, by the way. I don't listen to any podcasts because I'm learning other things in different places, and I learned way too much things and odd subjects lately too. Like, did you know actually, from a cremation side of things, if you cremate an obese person, it can actually cause a grease fire if the fire is too hot. So to cremate obese people, it has to be at a lower temperature.
That is amazing. How do they figure that out? Do they go on like a body mass index, or do they go by a body fat percentage? Do they caliper the cadaver? What do they do?
Combination.
Ooh, that's very interesting.
Yep. Again, just weird little things you pick up from, you learn this and then you read this, and then all of a sudden you're in a different wormhole learning about that, and just basic little shit. I don't know.
Do you know, there's so many things that you can learn about. I've always said for years and years and years, there is no excuse to be stupid because you have access to all of these different things. Do you watch, I suppose you don't watch it over there, but do you watch a program called QI?
No, what's that?
Oh, I'll have to send you some of these episodes because they're so funny. It's literally a program called QI. You can download it on YouTube and that kind of thing. And it's a guy called Stephen Fry, who's one of the most intelligent people on the planet. And he just asks all of these ridiculous questions that you're just going to kind of go, yeah, okay, it's this, but this is called a general ignorance round. So, they give you the automatic answer that we've all learned in school. And it's like, actually, no, you're wrong. And he tells you this entire scientific background about what this answer is for. You'll really enjoy it. You will really love it.
That's cool.
It's a question of like, why can't pigeons go to the movies? you know. Exactly, right? But it's that kind of question. But there is a really good scientific answer behind it. And it's because pigeons see things in such a fast manner that even if a movie was played at 100 times the actual speed that it would still be too slow. So the pigeons would lose their attention span.
Wow, I didn't know that. Thank you. That's
So
cool. I learned something new today.
I know, new knowledge bomb. So it's these kind of things. I love listening to all of these kind of stuff as well. I listened to a podcast from yourself actually the other day, where one of your colleagues actually talked about the eagle and how he could see things from like miles and miles away.
Yep.
So I actually went and educated myself on the rods and the cones and the shape of the eye of the eagle. I was just like, wow, that's really fascinating.
Did you go and end up looking at the penguin's eyes?
Oh, I didn't look at the penguins. No, I should.
You're gonna love it. So 3 eyelids. Eyes will actually change shape and dimensions based on if they're on land or in water. Really fascinating stuff.
Oh wow, that's cool. Do you know nature is just amazing, isn't it? The human body and nature is just incredible. I just really how on earth we manage to survive and how we continue to survive.
And we barely know what a cell looks like, and we're trying to go to Mars, and we still don't know the depths of the ocean. Like, I think we're focusing on the wrong thing here.
Yeah, for sure. Funny. Okay, so again, that was completely off on a tangent. Right?
Yeah, back on track. Sorry.
Let's get on the last little bit of the PED side of things. I'd really like to focus on Strongman, if that's okay. How much is too much in strength sports?
What do you mean? Too much of what? Drugs or
realistic, like PEDs? How much in terms of a comparison of how much is too much in comparison to how much is not enough? And I know that this is person dependent, but if we can have a look at like a general broad aspect, do you see people using over and above maybe the same kind of compounds and they're just using too much of it to the detriment of their own health and their sport in comparison to not using enough to give them that little bit of an edge?
So let's look at just what Strongman does to the body. So most people run into more structural based problems. So again, more orthopedics, elbows, knees, hips, joints, all those things start to give out because things are so demanding. So usually on the Strongman side of things, the peptide category, the insulins on the actual recovery, the storage and things like that allow them to train at that capacity. And then the growth hormones allow all of those other articular joints and cartilage to actually be recovered to be able to handle up all that loading. So the peptide category comes in very massive. Then whenever we look at the actual androgen translational side of things, we can't really get into that conversation just because it depends so much on the person. If you look at the female side of things, I have a lot of female strongmen where we start off with metformin, then slowly introduce metformin and a small amount of growth hormone. Then those two are in there. Then it's a small amount of insulin. And then at this point, we've used all those lower tier players that are giving such a big bang on their buck, but zero strain, or at least as little strain on systemic health as we can. Now we bring in a 4-week cycle or course of some kind of an androgen based on when they're actually competing, and you can layer that because all of the issues that female get on the androgenic side of things, it's all duration dependent. So you want to do it 4 to 6 weeks at a time, 4 to 6 weeks off, some kind of a cyclical pattern like that. And obviously, when you get to pro sports, that can definitely change. You could push duration and things like that. But in general, lower just enough time to get the action and you're good. And then the time off, you're using something else to bridge. So could be a little more insulin, could be a little more growth. You could do a bunch of different little things like that. But in general, I would say over in Strongman, most people need more of the structural help. So it's usually a peptide conversation with the background amount of androgens just to make them get by. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. So do you find then a lot of the problems arise because they use too much androgens and not enough peptides, and that's the reason why all the injuries occur?
So I actually feel like most people, I feel like most people just use too much of everything. Meaning, depending on who you are, this is where it's hard to get to the dosage conversation because compound selection and dosage are only dependent on that person. So some people have these weird polymorphisms where they don't metabolize drugs the same as you and me. So like, look at my drug response compared to X IFBB Pro. I could take 500 milligrams and they could take 500 milligrams, yet I'm not going to look like them. They're going to put on pounds of tissue because they dismantle those drugs so much better than me. So we have to look at that conversation, understand the dosage is just dependent on the person. And then from there, it's what's a lot for you, or what's a lot for me, or what's too much. And I hate that I can't give you a specific answer, but like this is why it's so important to look at drug history. So we look at body weight, and then we look at drug history, and then we kind of figure out, okay, what milligram per kilogram ratio are you looking at to need? Everyone gets up in arms because they say, and this is kind of the we'll say the bro crowd, which I have no problems with at all, but they misunderstand things. When we're looking at dosing drugs on a milligram per kilogram basis, that's literally how it's dosed in medicine. If you look at all medicines, it's all dosed on body weight. Now, because of the polymorphisms, because of drug history and exposure and experience, that changes the equation. So it's not to say that if you're a 100-kilo athlete or a 40-kilo athlete, you need this amount of androgens. It's to say, okay, you're 100 kilos and you're taking this much to get all of the results you need. So what milligram per kilogram ratio is that? What number is that? So we know at the lowest you can go to here and the highest you can go to here. Same thing as saying you need 400 milligrams or 800 milligrams. It's just switched to milligram per kilogram. So that's on the male side of things. On the female side of things, usually it's the slow escalation and incline in androgens that helps so much more than the massive jumps and swings. So women will go from having, we'll say, metformin, insulin growth hormone, and then 4 weeks onto an androgen as well, and they'll put in like 100 total milligrams per week. That's a lot to actually jump up to. So we're looking at starting off with the lowest possible dosage. So if we're looking at injectable compound, a couple milligrams of Primo can go a really long way. If you're looking at getting some of the female-sized tablets, you can get Anavars in like, well, if you go to the right manufacturer, a couple milligram tablets, like 1, 2, or 3, certain places are making now. Even 5s are amazing. Even though that adds up to be 35 milligrams at the end of the week, that's still not that much, but it gives you some kind of a runway. It's not that more is better, because in the androgenic side of things, they're all giving off chemical signalings. So you take a dosage, and the protein translation, all of the secondary cascades that we talked about, it's glycogen or whatever changes, it happens from that one chemical stimulus, and then you need another dosage to do the same thing. So that's why we escalate over time, because if not, you're essentially sending the same signal over and over again and not more. So if you know as a female, you have 4 weeks, and let's say in the past you worked up to 100 total milligrams. If you know you have to get to 100 milligrams, well, you took your 4 weeks off. Maybe this time now you start at 75. Then week 2, you go to 100. Then you go to 125. Then you stay there. You only made a 25 milligram increase from previously, but you got all this extra growth because you didn't just jump right up to 100 and then add another 100 on top of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. It's that titration that people do not understand, and that is very, very dangerous when people can just go from, say, I'm just going to take a male example, but people can go from like 50 milligrams of tren to 300 milligrams of tren just overnight. And it's just like, that's kind of not very safe.
Exactly. And then on the opposite side of the token, if you are a pro bodybuilder XYZ who's taking in 5 grams of gear, you have to make those big jumps because you start off at 2, a prep's only 12, 20 weeks, whatever. So going from 2 to 5, you got to make some big jumps. So it's all based on the drug history of the person, the response, and then you just manage chemical signaling so that you essentially, just like I said, bringing this whole conversation retarded here. Full circle. There we go. Myocyte maturation cycle starts here, builds up. Usually in the off season, food starts here, builds up. Drugs, every cycle, start here and they build up. So it's all that slow escalation so that training, nutrition, pharmaceuticals, everything is kind of all going in tandem instead of training being way over here and then no cardio over there and then no drugs and then all the drugs. And it's not scatterbrained. It's actually thought out and it's more finessed than the brute force, because the brute force method, it's not going to get you results and it's probably going to take years off your life. So let's try and minimize at least as much damage we do, because no matter what, taking drugs is not healthy. So we have to make sure we're trying to minimize the strain on our health at least as best we can.
I love that. I love how we managed to actually come full circle all the way around, and we've done it in under an hour. So we've done really well on that. I know. How good is that? So, very, very last question. So this is the curveball that I give to everybody, and I put them on the spot. And it is, if you could have dinner with 3 people, living or dead, who would they be?
Wife, Andy, and Broderick, because I never met him yet.
Do you know what? I really wanted to catch you out on something. But no, those are absolutely perfect perfect answers, which is brilliant. Alix, it has been an absolute pleasure and an honor to have you on. I have enjoyed every single minute that we have been speaking. Where can people find you and follow you and mind you for some more information?
So Instagram is at Alex_KIKEL. Website is theprepcoach.com. If you just Google the Prep Coach, I'll just pop up everywhere.
Cool. And I'll put all of that information underneath, guys. Alix, thank you once again for all of your time and all of your knowledge bombs. I will look forward to speaking to you again in the future. Guys, if you've got any further questions, then please comment below on the YouTube video. Everything else is going to be released as per normal. Like, share, and be in for a win of a t-shirt. So until the next episode of Don't Fear the Wait, much love as always.